Call this meeting to order. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. There is a couple changes in the format to the agenda tonight. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, we would like to move items 9A and 9B right after the 6, which is the report. So before 7, before the public hearing, we'd like to move 9A and 9B, please.
All right. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda then?
So moved. Motion.
Okay, for a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Open forum. Open forum's open if anybody would like to speak.
Mr. Mayor, we did have one gentleman that signed up that would like to address the council. Mr. Gettle, I believe is his name.
Okay.
I'm here because of the wire that I put up over there across from the trailer park. The reason I put it up because there seems to be a lot of garbage get hauled in there. I've been farming that for 15 years. And now since I put the wire there, everything stays out of there. Last year before the Stearns County took it over there, when I cut hay there last year, in the back of that building, it was as wide as the building and higher than the doors and out about 30 feet from the building. So if there's any complaints about the barbed wire, I'm assuming that's the people that's dumping stuff in there. Now they got to go and pay for someplace to dump it. So it was brought to my attention, well, somebody might get hurt if it gets hit with a snowmobile. Well, what about the farmers out in the country? There's all kinds of barbed wire around.
Okay. Did you do a locate when you put those wires in?
Don't need to. The post didn't go in that deep.
Okay.
I'm assuming it's right on the border where you guys were cutting and where I was cutting, or the city was cutting.
Did you come in for a permit?
No, I didn't know you had to put in a permit to build a fence.
Okay. Because I would say we had an ordinance for fences. We've had that for a very long time.
I tried to get a hold of that and I couldn't get a hold of it. I'd like to see them ordinance.
Okay. We can definitely get them for you.
Okay.
But no matter what happens, it would have to be taken down and applied. And also you have to get locates whenever you dig.
I didn't dig.
Or pounding anything in. That's everywhere in the country. That's law.
Not when you put posts in. They're only down about a foot. Everything else is buried 2 or 3 feet.
Okay. All right. Well, I know that there is an ordinance that we have to abide by, so we have to go in those process first. So
Okay.
you're going to have to come in, talk to Lisa, apply for a permit,
Okay?
and if it's possible, then it is. But I know that in city limits, I don't believe we allow barbed wire fences.
Well, I guess I can change it.
So, go ahead.
There's some exceptions for actively used for agriculture. The question is though whether it's actively agriculture. And so that's,
Well, I've been agriculturing it for the last 15 years. I've had beans in there, but plowed it. I've had corn in there, I've had small grain in there, and now I just put it in the hay, because corn and beans isn't worth anything anymore. Hay is worth more than corn and beans.
But we do have to go through a process, and that's final. We have to do it the way our ordinance, so feel free to come in tomorrow, talk to our administrator, talk to Lisa, and that's where we're gonna start. We're just
Okay.
not gonna go and put it in, because we've taken fences down in people's yards if they don't apply for one. That's our ordinance. So it has to be followed.
All right, I'd like to get a copy of it. Another
when
thing,
you-
is there any objections to who buys that land? Because Harley Harley that owns it, he's gotten a call from some Adams lady out of the city. She's got some investors and wants to buy that. Now, I don't know who it is or anything. I just heard something about it. He talked to me about it.
Oh, that's something that he'll have to discuss with whoever.
Mr. Gallo, are you renting the land, or do you-
What's that?
are you renting the land, or do you
Yeah.
own the land? You're renting it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So no matter what, first start, we have to talk to these people and get it done the right way.
Okay?
And if you need a copy of ordinance, Lisa, we have a copy of that ordinance first thing tomorrow morning? Okay, but we have to start this way. We just don't do it that way in here. Stock Center doesn't do it that way. Albany doesn't do it that way. In town is different than out of city limits. And that's just the way it is.
Well, I guess I was trying to keep the garbage out of there.
I know. And it is tough. I mean, I know the telephone company has a building there, and there's plenty of trash that happens over there too. And there's other places in town that it's everywhere. So, but we have to follow the rules. That's just the way it's gotta be. Okay?
Okay? I'll see if I can get in the next day or so and get a permit.
Okay. And we will be in contact with you because it has to be resolved.
Yeah, yeah,
One way or another, it's
Yeah.
gonna be resolved, okay?
yeah. All right, thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to visit the open forum? All right, we're on the consent agenda. Approval of the minutes, approval of the bills, purchase orders, approval of the investments, the ambulance department bad debt account, fire department bad debt account, a donation resolution, number 2019-51, donation from the Melrose Lions. Also resolution number 2019-52, resolution designating polling place. Any questions? Can I get a motion to approve?
So move.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. 5 has been erased for right now. We are on to reports. Chief Mouse?
Good evening. Our September 2019 monthly statistics. We had 27 citations issued, 94 verbal warnings, 2 written warnings. We pulled 330 calls or requests for service. Last year was 465. We ended on ICR 3353, and last year was 3988. So we're down a total of 635 from last year. Overall for calls and requests for service. Just some things that we've been working on. The abatement property is looking better. Vehicles are gone. There's some stuff that's been put in storage and whatnot. So we have until 28th will be when we do re-inspection of this month, and we'll either move forward with the court process or hopefully we're done. It's always the goal anyway. Some areas that I want to make the public aware of, and I know that Carol was in today to put something in the beacon as well. Counterfeit $100 bills have been floating in Melrose, Sauk Center, Freeport, St. Cloud, and that's about all we've heard of so far. They're taking legitimate bills, washing them, making them 100, so they're passing the pen test. So the watermark that is on the bill is the key to verifying that it's a legitimate bill or not. So we've been putting some education through the Chamber of Commerce to get out to the business owners so that they can either get ahead of it, or if they received any bills, they can at least make us aware of it, get video together. And we have several people on video, and we're working on identifying them with Sauk Center and the other agencies.
Quick question on that. Is it the old style $100 bill or is it the new style?
It's the 96 through 2013 editions is what it is. So it's the previous version of this one.
All right.
Otherwise, that's the most of it. Any questions?
Don't have any.
All right, thanks, Chief. Mr. Scott?
Couple odds and ends. Following up on the last month's meeting, there was some interest in these lots the city has that's they platted when they acquired the right-of-way. There was interested parties that wanted to buy them, so we went ahead and made up the deeds to transfer those from the city to the adjoining property owners. Also for the utilities, some work they were doing, they needed some additional easement, so I went ahead and prepared an easement from the property owner in favor of the city so that they could continue with their work. The other item after the last meeting, there was a question about the new emergency management agreement, specifically the language in Article 12 about records and availability and access. And when I looked into that, there's a reference to this Minnesota Statute 16 CO5 subdivision 5, and the language you're seeing in Article 12 of the agreement is basically pulled right out of the statute. This is language that by statute needs to be in there. I think looking at it, it's an anti-fraud measure. I think that they're trying to make sure that they can look at, not only the city, or in this case, the county's records, but, anyone that they have been, giving money to make sure they match up, and that's the goal. So, and really, this similar language will appear in really any city, any contract, particularly where there's potential for money to be changing hands, about, access to records. Looking at it, by and large, this language tracks the language in the statute. I did note that in preparing this agreement, the drafter attempted to narrow it to the extent they could. Looking at it, one of the things they did is say, well, we're only going to provide access to the extent required by the statute and no more. And then they also limited it to just records that pertain to this agreement or would arise under this agreement. So it isn't an open door to look at, everybody's records, even things that have nothing to do with, actions that would occur under this agreement. So they've tried to, they've taken the state statute, put it in the agreement because they have to, and then tried to narrow its scope. Also, I note in there that, it's also not an open door forever and ever. They've limited it to 7 years there at the very end. So, after an event occurs, request for these types of documents has to be made within 7 years. If they're trying to go back and look at something older than that, then the access wouldn't apply. So it might give you a little heartburn, but it's in there to comply with state requirements, and to the extent that it can be narrowed, I think they've done a fairly good job of narrowing it and limiting its reach. So I think this is coming up later on your agenda for consideration. So thought I should come back and let you know what I found. Thank you.
And the bottom line here is, should some community befall a major event, they're reaching out and getting resources from another agency, whether it be a city, the county, whatever. There's some method to reimburse for time, but not gouge. And I think that was probably what you were making reference to in the statute.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, the agreement addresses reimbursing, but not gouging. I think where this statute originally came up, where I've seen things like this more commonly, would be, in the city of Melrose's case, where you've got some kind of an improvement project, and so it's road construction or a building, and you put it out for bids, and you award the bids, and in the contract, the agreement with the contractor, you'll see similar agreement where the contractor is agreeing to make, their records, regarding, this contract available for inspection and audit. And I think really where this state is getting at is if there is an emergency, they're probably not really going to be terribly concerned if you run over and you spend a few hours on a fire. But if it's a big emergency and then you start getting, funds from the state to help pay for things, they're going to want to track those dollars. And they don't want to run into a roadblock because the people they gave it to in turn used some of it to reimburse another community, and then the other community doesn't cooperate. So,
You don't have any reservations then, and we approve this, it looks like.
no, I don't. I think that the only reason it's in there is because the state of Minnesota says it has to be in there.
That's good. All right, thank you.
Lisa?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The Planning Commission met on September 30th. They considered the plat of Jenny Acres, preliminary and final plat. That will be on your agenda next month. It's a single lot subdivision. They're just adding one additional lot, but they'd never been platted and they're under 5 acres. So it's just on the north side of the interstate. Also, third quarter building permit summary. The third quarter totals were $1,082,000 in building permits, and year-to-date is $10,407,000. The quarterly is slightly behind 2018's numbers, but year-to-date is significantly over 2018. Particularly, we've got quite a bit going in the commercial and industrial new construction, but overall, good community health in terms of building permits.
Thank you. City Administrator report.
We continue to refine options that we have on the craft lot. We're actually have met with a couple different development groups, and between that and different housing projects, we have a couple of development groups that we'll be meeting with over the next couple weeks. St. Mary's EAW was published, and people have until October 30th to submit their comments for that. After that time, what happens is it will come back to the council, and you will formally approve a resolution determining whether or not that meets the requirements from an environmental standpoint, or if you're going to order additional environmental requirements. To date, we have had 2 requests for the actual documents, but we have had no comments come in that I'm aware of. Patty, unless you know of any. We had talked about doing strategic planning in December, and I'd like to actually get that moved to February 20th of 2020. That seems like quite a ways off, but I actually have to go down to the LCCMR meeting on December 12th. So we moved our city council meeting to December 19th, or no?
No, because of the public truth and taxation, we have to leave that.
Oh, you have to leave it. Okay, well, you guys
Talked
will,
about it, but yes.
you guys are all be at LCCMR, and you guys will just, Tessa can just handle the city council meeting, no problem. So then we will look at doing strategic planning on February 20th. And then, as I talked about the housing, and then just very briefly, we continue to work on the HVAC project here at City Hall. It's kind of a little bit of a puzzle. We're still having issues with losing some pressure, different things like that, but they're diligently working towards trying to figure that out. So that's what I have in my report, and then I will be going into, obviously, the other part of my presentation later.
Okay. All right. Is there any questions? Okay. We are going down to old business. So the first one is Stearns County intra-county mutual aid agreement. Tony, everything was answered for you,
Yep.
right? Okay. Can I get a motion to approve it then?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. And we are on B, which is Rock Arch Rapids Dam Bridge Project, RDB.
Yeah, there we go. So, before you this evening is, it's actually, it's almost 3 projects, but they're all very much related. So there's the Rock Arch Rapids itself, there is the dam, and there is the bridge. So just for purposes of kind of talking about this, rather than saying that whole big, huge mouthful, we're just gonna say RDB for the rest of the presentation part of it. This, I want to show you guys before we get too far into this, an actual drone video that was done to kind of set the stage to show you. This was Lake Melrose. This was actually done on August 15th of 2019. It was flown by Soil and Water Conservation District. Should be coming up momentarily there. Oh, maybe. Come on. Oh, there it goes. And it just kind of shows you what the lake itself and the dam looks like. It gives you that view. So looking at where the green is, and I'm not saying this will happen, but that's, there's a narrow channel kind of in the middle. And if that were an actual river, that's probably close to what it might look like. Again, this is just giving you the picture of sort of the overall view of Melrose Lake, and the beginning was the dam. So tonight, what I really want to talk to the council about, and for the people that are listening, is the Rock Arch, or the RDB project has been discussed. I think Mike and I were talking about it 45 different times. It has gone before some sort of a public setting related to this particular project. Since October of 2016, it has been discussed 29 times. So what I would very much like to do, when I had started in June, we were scheduled to go to the LCCMR board and talk to them and present our work plan for the full pool Arch Rock Rapids. At that time, I just kind of put a pause on everything, and I said, you know, we just need a time out here. I need to, number one, get not necessarily more information. We have an abundance of information, but to really understand what all that information is telling us, and to make sure that I understand the perspective of all the parties that are involved in this particular project. So that's why it's taken 4 months to come back to the council. But what I'd really like the council to consider this evening is priorities, options, costs, and what the next steps are going to be. So priorities, if we break these down from a priority standpoint, I want to take them each individual part of this separately. So the bridge itself is outdated and needs to be replaced. The bridge has been on the county bridge plan since 2013. The Stearns County, and Jody is here tonight to answer any questions you may have, but they are very much willing to work with us. However, we do need to move forward to capitalize on the funding cycle that they have for this project. So it's imperative that a decision gets made about the bridge very, very soon. Another priority that you guys have talked about in the past as it relates to the RDB is street alignment. Fifth Avenue is an offset street. Aligning the street would create a safer intersection and address future traffic needs. And again, I'm merely stating the priorities that have been presented in 45 other meetings and kind of just summarizing what you guys have talked about. The dam. The dam itself is a very significant hazard dam. It was inspected last in 2017 and continues to see erosion and structural issues. Whatever course you determine to take regarding the RDB, you need to address the dam safety regardless. Environmental. Sauk River and Melrose Lake are both considered impaired bodies of water. There has been increased sedimentation, vegetation, and algae bloom. That was obviously very evident in the video we just saw from August. There also has been some significant erosion. The question when it comes to environmental and when it relates to the Sauk River and Melrose Lake is this really truly just a Melrose issue? Or is this something that's bigger beyond Melrose and really should be looked at by the Sauk River watershed? I do want to point out that the DNR, Soil and Water Conservation District, Sauk River watershed, LCCMR, two different areas of the DNR. We're all invited to come to this meeting this evening. I did hear back from Greg Berg with the Soil and Water Conservation District, and he was not able to make it. He just said, please keep me posted. I also did hear back from Luther, and I'll talk about what his comments are when I get to that part of the presentation. And he is with the DNR. I did not hear anything back from the Sauk River watershed. So recreational opportunities. The other thing regarding that has been talked about in the past is, what do you do from a park space standpoint, by doing different things to the dam, the bridge, the RDB? What do you do when it comes to park space, fishing, camping expansion, or more utilization from the public itself? Did you have a question? I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to let you know to go from the watershed.
Oh, perfect. Awesome. That's great. And your name, please?
Sarah.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you for being here, Sarah.
Yes, absolutely.
Existing conditions. So again, this is not new information that you have, but it's really, Sauk River is considered an impaired water. It is a major perennial stream in central Minnesota with a watershed that is 66,200 acres. Currently, the dam acts as a catch basin for all the water flowing in from Sauk Lake. This is a fixed site dam with 2 different gates on it. We are different, and that's what I think is important to note, is that upstream from us, the Sauk Lake is able to control their dam differently. They can raise and lower that. And so depending on what they end up doing, that has could potentially have a negative impact on what happens downstream, which is us. According to the December 2017 State of Minnesota Dam Safety Report, the dam is considered, as we talked about, a significant hazard dam. In your packet, there was a letter that was sent out from the DNR talking about some of the things that would need to be done to make sure that the dam were brought up to a standard to be made safe. If the dam were to fail, there would be catastrophic environmental and public impact to the river and its attributing watersheds. That's worst case scenario. Again, that is just information that has been brought to your attention before. If we look at the project goals, and again, these goals are related to 2 different options that we're going to be looking at this evening, 1A and 1B, and that is related to the Arch Rock Rapids or the Rock Arch Rapids, however you want to say it. Either if that is something that you decide to do, the idea behind those 2 options are to remove the significant hazard dam and replace it with a realigned channel, an Arch Rock Rapids, a fish ladder, stabilize the bank and management, and restore habitat. The idea was that it would be a natural hydraulic design channel, improve biology within the stream. It would be a greater fish habitat, and it would also restore a major part of a riparian habitat while connecting 72 miles of stream from Sauk Lake to the Sauk River chain of lakes. So really what you're going to be looking at tonight is there's kind of two different areas in terms of how you want to move forward with what you would like to do or how you would like to proceed on this project. 1A and 1B relate specifically to the Rock Arch Rapids. The first option is that there would be a Rock Arch Rapids that was put in that would not reduce the lake level. The second option would, which is a DNR preferred option, and I'm simply stating that because that's been confirmed by the DNR. In fact, it was confirmed by Luther again when I talked to him this week. They would like to see that lake level drop by 7 feet in order to maximize. Now, I'm just telling you that's what the DNR wants. I am certainly not advocating that. I also want to be aware that I also understand, and I want everyone to know there are 71 residents that reside on Melrose Lake. They have been at many meetings to talk about this as well, and I know that the council has certainly looked at this too. The other side of it is, okay, if you leave the Rock Arch Rapids alone, you leave the lake alone, you don't necessarily address that, then you're simply looking, or not simply, it's still complicated, but you're looking at replacing a bridge, repairing the dam. So the next 3 options, which are 2, 3, and 4, are going to be talking about, do you realign the river channel? Number 3 would be, do you realign the river channel and also connect Fifth Avenue, which is the street that would go north and south? Or do you, which number 4, go back to the original 2013 plan, which is simply replacing the bridge and repairing the dam? So Mike is here, and he's going to go through these options for you from an engineering standpoint. Mike is with WSB, our city consultant engineer, and he's just going to talk briefly about the 5 options that I just talked about. Keep in mind that, certainly we understand that this isn't an easy decision, and that there's been a lot of information about all of these that has been out there. We just want to, even if there's something that...
I was just going to say, this is like rehashing stuff that has been rehashed so many times already. And I honestly thought that just a couple meetings ago, maybe it was 3 or 4 meetings ago, we gave the direction to say if the full pool height is not supported by the DNR, we want to know that. And that's why we spent the money. It was either full pool height or nothing. We were going to leave the dam there if it was not supported to a full pool height rock arch rapids. Now we're back here talking about 8 foot high rock arch rapids. And that was, I thought we directed that as not an option before. Pretty sure we all agreed, sitting right here, that we're done talking about lowering it, changing it. It was either the DNR is going to support full height or they're not. That was the option that we wanted. We wanted to narrow this down before. Plus, the bridge, I believe, was the priority. Not aligning the streets on Main Street. What I don't want to happen is this opens up into another, let's get back to square one, and everybody has their say and stuff like that. We've been, like you said, 45 meetings. A lot of us have sat in on a lot of those. The pushing the bridge north, the option, what it was, option 2, I think, is what we had said that we were going to go forward with. And if you want me to, I'll research all the past meetings. But I thought that we had determined that that's the way we were going. And here we are now rehashing all this. And I don't know how much this has cost, but that was one of the big concerns was we're spending a lot of money talking about it with WSB, and I'm sure there's some expense rolled into this also. But that's from my perspective. I don't know what you guys remember, but do we need to go through all this and determine this again?
And it's just a summary so that everyone is aware of all the different options. And Tony, I could be wrong, but I've looked at everything, and you guys did not make a formal decision on going one way yet. You have not made a formal decision.
Not a formal decision. I know we left that sliver of hope that we would do the full pool height, and we spent the $15,000, $20,000 to get the high level. Was it flow velocity rates or something for the full pool height rock arch rapids that we needed to know whether or not they would approve it, whether before we would go forward with it? That's what we spent that money for. And that's the answer that we still don't have, correct?
We don't have a formal answer from the DNR on that, but I can tell you we had met in June, we went back and we had almost a 2-hour conference call with LCCMR, the DNR, and the rest of the folks. And the DNR, like any agency, if they have to see the data, but everything that they have told us and everything that they said basically is they are not in support of a full pool arch rock rapids. Without saying it.
We realize they're not in support of it, but we spent that extra money to do some high-level, whatever it was, to find out whether or not, if we go forward with it, it will be supported or it will not be supported. That's the answer that I believe we wanted from the DNR.
But they kept coming back to us and asking for additional information. And the last time that we all talked, we had said, we're putting this on pause because we don't want to have to spend that extra $60,000 to $70,000 in engineering fees to be able just to be told by the DNR that this was not going to work. that's where we were at, because we could not get that funded through LCCMR.
Right, but there was a small amount of money that was put forward to get some answer from WSB, what was it called, Mike? What analysis did we need done?
Well, there was a shear and velocity analysis on the Rock Arch Rapids themselves.
Right.
You know, I think you're correct. I mean, the more we did, the more we provided, it just seemed that we were not going to get a favorable answer. I mean, I think we can engineer our way around some of these issues, but, you know, as we looked at the first iteration of that Rock Arch Rapids, when they wanted us to lower the step in there, we figured that was probably going to cost an additional $1 million at that point. They were still looking for some other things that, again, would have increased the cost further and further. So right now, we're looking at probably the additional cost of that portion of it was about $1.1 million, roughly.
And I'm not going to put the gentleman on the spot, but Senator Tory Westrom from Melville Lake is present at our meeting tonight, and I know that he made a Hercules effort to try to get the DNR to come around to the full pool height Rock Arch Rapids Dam. I think despite his best efforts, it's probably not going to happen. Otherwise, they're just going to wait us out.
Right.
And I think we've discussed this to the point of where we know the dam or the bridge has to be replaced, and it has to be replaced fairly soon. And I recall, I think most of the council was leaning towards, let's make sure that we stay on the timetable to get the bridge replaced. And if the other pieces of the puzzle fall into place, they do, but if they don't, I think the bridge is now the priority.
Right.
Well, and then having said that, then it actually makes it easier for us. We can just skip forward to what are then options 2, 3, and 4, which are the dam repairs, the bridge replacement, looking at the traffic efficiency and safety, and some positive environmental impacts. So option 2, and Tony, if it's all right, I would like to just go through these briefly because they are related strictly to the bridge and the channel, and Mr. Mayor and the council, if I may. Mike and I would just like to spend a little bit of time talking about each one of these options. So Mike, if you want to go ahead.
Okay, well, Clean kind of redubbed this RDB. I'm just going to call it the dam project. That's even shorter.
Inappropriate.
So option 2, which is really where we had settled it the last time we had talked it, before we even got into the Rock Arch Rapids, that would be shifting the bridge to the north to accommodate the intersection spacing between Main Street and First Street Northeast. That would allow us to fill in, remove part of the craft wall and fill it in down at a manageable slope that would take care of that erosion. As part of that, we would be realigning the channel downstream of the bridge, taking out a portion of the park. As you can see in this area here, it would have left the gazebo in and had minimal impact on the camping spots. Option number 3, and again, in every scenario here, we do need to address the dam repairs. I think that's kind of a given at some point in the near future. So I'm going to spend very little time on that. But with option 3, we were again asked to look at realigning Fifth Avenue with the Fifth Avenue South and bringing that back in to Fifth Avenue on the north at about the park entrance. This would require a further realignment of the channel to keep that intersection spacing consistent between Main Street and First Street as it was with option 2. This option would take out more of the park, would probably eliminate 6 to 8 of the camping spots in the park, but it would provide some significant efficiencies to the intersection at Main and Fifth. It would eliminate the offset and allow for at least initially a 4-way stop and maybe sometime in the future a stop signal at this location. And option 4 again is just going back to the original option that we had in 2013. The problem with this is the narrow spacing between First Street and Main Street. I think that the concern at that point was that cars would back up through the intersection and cause congestion. So, again, when we look at the costs in this, they're obviously a little bit cheaper than lining the channel, but we'll get into the costs a little bit in a little more detail in a minute here.
One of the other things I did want to mention is we did ask that the county come back and do an updated traffic study to see if we met what's called 70% of the warrants, to see if this area would be eligible for either a signalized intersection or some sort of roundabout. If you meet 70% of warrants, it's kind of, that's what they look at. When the traffic study was done, it came back that we did not meet that. So then we are looking at the options that you have in front of you tonight and not that, any of those.
Does it determine whether or not it justifies putting a four-way stop in there? Because the message that I remember is, you can't just say we're going to line the intersection and put a four-way stop there. That still has to be justified through another traffic study, whether or not it's justified to have, because it's two county road intersections. So you have to get approval from the county. We can't just, as a city, put stop signs all over. That has to be an approval from the county, correct?
Yes, and
Okay.
typically we want it to be approaching those warrants. We would lessen them from the 70% warrants,
Right.
which is required for a signal. We took counts about 2 weeks ago on a Thursday, I believe, a Wednesday or a Thursday. And usually it's a minimum of 8 hours meeting 70% of those warrants because it's a city under 10,000. There are no other signals in the area. So during the 12-hour counts, 2 hours met the warrants. One was kind of close if I scratched it, and the others were not close.
Right.
We're probably talking school times.
Right.
That would have been daytime hours, school.
Yeah, it's basically 6 a.m. to 6 p.m.
So we did want to just have that most up-to-date data, and Jody was, worked with us on that. So we do appreciate that we do have that most data with us. Okay, so the next, and I don't expect anybody to be able to see this, but there are copies of this in front of all the council members, and then there's extra copies over on the table if anybody did not get one. So we're just gonna go right past the first two, and we're gonna go right to option 2, which is a bridge and channel realignment. So this is basically bridge replacement, channel realignment, street alignment is not changed, and the dam is repaired. And we say repaired, that means we work with the DNR, we work with them to determine what we need to do to make sure that that's a safe situation. So basically with this one, the bottom line is this is about a $5.2 million project. The city, over the course of all of this, originally committed $700,000, whatever reiteration or whatever iteration we ended up taking with this. Under option 2, it is not very likely. In fact, it's next to impossible that we would receive any of the money from the LCCMR that was committed on the project or the Lessard SAMs. So you have to take those two costs out of, or those two funding sources out of the equation. And those funding sources, just for your information, were $2.7 million and $737,000. So if you take those out, working with Jody, we kind of estimated that the county commitment's somewhere in that we have 2.6 kind of on the high end. It could be anywhere from 2.1 to 2.6 depending on what we do. And so then we end up with the gap of 1.1, which means that we have no committed funding source for 1.1 million of this scenario. City items that we are responsible for are the city street and utilities, 1/2 the right-of-way, and if we wanted as an option a 10-foot sidewalk. The Melrose Bike and Pedestrian Committee is very strongly committed to wanting to have that sidewalk in there, and we actually feel for what we would need to do, that we have a very good chance of getting funding for that, but because it's not committed today, I don't want to throw that in there as a funding source. So the bottom line is, again, it's 5.2. Our gap, which is, or the city cost, I guess, is our commitment, which is $700,000. We have a gap in there And then we have the city items, which is $778,000, which we're responsible for. Do you guys want me to answer questions on each one of these? Do you want to wait till the end, or what would you like to do?
I think we're moving on.
Yeah, kind of curious about it's a city street and utilities.
Yes.
There are some expenses that have already been expensed, like the utilities reroute for the bridge. I'm assuming that is part of these costs. I'm not, without looking
Talking
at,
about the electric.
Electric that went under?
Being directional drilled under.
Yeah,
No,
and
I've not
sewer, water, and
those
sewer.
costs. I mean, they're done. I
okay,
mean,
these are all new costs.
Yeah, what we're looking at yet is the water main replacement, which we're estimating at $200,000.
Okay, and that's public utilities. What I'm curious about is what are our expenses looking at it sitting here? So public utilities obviously has their expenses.
Yeah, out of that 458,000,
Right.
I mean, it would be 200 from public utilities roughly,
But
and
it's-
roughly 258
Okay.
for city street expenses.
Yeah,
So
we
when-
still
so
have
to
to
the-
come up with the PUC side of it, though.
Right, so what I'm looking at is, this 2.5 is a little bit misleading from our perspective, because that's not all general fund. And some of those same costs are included in the other ones also. Does that make sense? From the city's perspective. So without having the true cost breakdowns, it's hard to know, what direction to go if, does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
Is it going to affect our budget? Public utilities obviously has their own commission. They determine how they do things, where the utilities go, stuff like that. So they're determining what costs are, how the costs are being spent, I guess. But
Yeah, and the only
Those costs.
reason, and I apologize, I should have defined that a little differently, but the only reason it's all together is
Right.
we can't decide that we're just going to do, we have to work it as one project versus,
Right.
maybe they do the water main now, it's all has to be done. So if we decide that city/PUC, whoever's cost it is,
Right.
but I do understand your point, Tony, so we could pull that 200,000 probably out of there, and we could allocate a certain amount of engineering to that as well. And that would be more PUC, so it does not affect the bottom line of what the general fund budget is. And
not that
certainly,
I-
we can work those numbers, and please keep in mind, these are estimates, and they're very high estimates.
Yes, right. I was going to say, I don't think the estimates were quite this high before.
Yeah, but we didn't have right away
Starting
there.
in 2012, and if we
Yeah.
account for inflation, they're probably pretty close.
Yeah.
Again,
Yeah, and the
we
other,
didn't spend a ton of extra time on this in
Yep.
finding our estimates. I mean, we kind of did a,
the other question I also have is, as far as the county goes, when the funding request goes to the state, as far as the bonding dollars, do you take a certain dollar figure and put it in your bonding request for like this bridge and then whatever other, or is it like a giant lump sum and then you,
This would be through the local bridge replacement program.
okay,
And so MinDOT assigns dollars as the legislature allocates them to a waiting list.
Okay.
Now, this bridge has been on the waiting
Oh, yeah.
list for a few years. And so I keep asking MinDOT, keep it on the list, but move it down. We can't take the money right now.
Right.
And so it's still on the waiting list. And so hopefully, the legislature will allocate more money to the local bridge replacement program, given that this coming year is a bonding year. And then we're still on that waiting list, and we will be in a position where we can commit to doing the project within 2 years.
Okay.
After the bonding bill would pass with that money out.
right. And anything you allocate as far as expenses to the bridge has to be legitimately within, what is it, 40 feet either side of the bridge or something, as far as, not even that much, 20 feet? Right.
Is a county road cost.
Right.
In fact, the bridge, because it's on a state aid route,
Yeah.
we'll have to pay half of the cost of the eligible bridge costs with our own county state aid funding for roads. So we'll have to pay half of those bridge costs, half of it would be paid by the state bridge fund.
Okay. All right.
But where the county also shares with us is the right-of-way, if we have to acquire additional right-of-way costs.
Yep.
And that wasn't figured in before when we had discussed this, and so that cost is included in here as well. And so that's something that the county and us have talked about. If we want to do outside of, is your design 6-foot sidewalks, Jody, on the bridge?
On the bridge, typically, that's what the
Okay.
bridge, they would approve in the bridge.
Yeah.
Anything beyond that is.
Yes, is ours. So, we had always talked about that 10-foot being much safer because of this being a major route for school. And again, we had also, we feel that we have a very good shot at probably getting funding to pay for that part of it, but we don't know that yet.
However that goes, we need probably to know whether or not we qualify, because once you engineer the bridge, you don't want to have to go back and re-engineer the bridge, because that's a huge expense.
Yeah.
So either we have a pretty good, like a 90% positive shot at getting that grant money for that extra 10 feet. We should know that before we make that determination, whether or not we're going to request that extra 10 feet, I think.
Yep,
So.
absolutely, makes sense. Anybody else have any questions about option number 2 and the costs associated with it? So I'm gonna go to 3, and I'm just, again, putting these out there. So 3 is the bridge, the channel, and the street realigned. We've talked about this with the county as well. This is similar, except for the fact that there's an additional funding because of how we'd have to realign the street if that's what we chose to do. This would be more, if you look at option 3, it's really looking at what would happen if Genio started up their their original plant again. What would that do? How do we deal with traffic that way? Do you guys anticipate that, this is a critical part of what we need to do for future for the city? And that's why this is one of those that was looked at. The one thing about this is it does take out more of the park, but the nice thing is within the park we do have room to work with. So we have a soccer field, we have some other things where we can move some stuff around. So I think, and talking to Gary, and I think, park board, some members are here, we would want to make sure that whatever we did not have a negative impact in terms of especially the camping sites, because in the future we want to make sure we have those camping sites. They're actually a nice feature for the city. So this is just, again, it's really similar to 2, but it's really aligning those streets. So does anybody, and in this one we would actually have additional right-of-way costs. It would be double of what it was in the last one. Because if we were to go with this option, we'd actually have to take out another building. Then we have currently purchased 1 building, and this one would require the purchase of an additional building.
Okay. Question for Jody, if I could.
Absolutely.
This pushing the bridge east 60 feet or whatever it was, I thought back when we talked about this 5 years ago or whatever it was, that the city's expenses were going to include realigning that road and everything. And I don't know if that's because the $2 million in option 3 is not going to cover the street realignment, the bridge realignment. It's going to be a longer bridge, a higher bridge. That number is not even close to accurate.
Well, we put additional costs in the county roadway. We put an extra additional $150,000 there.
Right.
And we put additional cost in for the channel excavation up in, I think, line number 3. We had another roughly $200,000 up there. So, and again, these are
right. But I'm
guesstimates.
Right. And I just want to make sure that if we are seriously going to look at option 3, that those costs get associated to county, city. We know exactly what we're talking about as far as our budget goes and stuff. So.
And I just want to point out, just as a reminder, and I'm sure most of you have heard this, and you're probably sick of, poor Colleen has heard this from me about 100 times in the last month. So outside of the bridge, which is a completely separate cost-share animal,
Right.
our county road policy, when we reconstruct a road, this is a state aid route, we pay back curb to back curb. So under this realignment, you would have a significant larger amount on the west side, basically the northwest quadrant of the intersection, whether it be concrete, landscaping, whatever it is. So, I mean, there are going to be some additional city costs there. So assume It's pretty safe to assume that MnDOT is going to assign 100% of the storm sewer costs to the county, because that's what I've seen over the last 7 to 10 years. Small cities generally don't have to pay anything towards storm sewer unless it's separate storm sewer, like on First Street. And so, so the county road storm sewer would generally be our cost. And then that back of curb to back of curb cost. So curb and gutter, pavement, gravel, everything underneath it except for the utilities. So outside of that, any turf establishment or sidewalks, the city would decide they wanted lighting, anything like that is going to be a city cost. But the roadway would be the county's. And in this case, it's the county road being realigned as opposed to the city street being realigned.
Okay.
So
because before, I think it was just the bridge itself, and then it was kind of indicated, I thought that the city would be required to pick up a lot of the street realignment expense, because it's not, that's optional. I mean, it's truly optional, so. But anyway,
And also was Elise's building on here for, we have to buy that out too?
yeah, right,
That's
that's the right-of-way
Yeah.
cost.
That's the right-of-way cost.
Yeah,
That's if that's even accurate.
yeah, right.
Miss Jody,
And I thought
what's
that
the
right away was very
anticipated
small.
lifespan?
He's gotta have some
of-
number on it, too.
I suppose it doesn't make a difference which bridge. There's kind of an average anticipated lifespan of these bridges?
generally, we're hoping bridges are going to last. We're supposed to use 50 years as a rule of thumb. We're hoping to get 75 to 80 years. So, yeah, we wouldn't want you to realign the street, 10 years after we replace the bridge.
All right.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions on that one?
Nope.
And then option 4 is just going back to the original 2013 bridge plan. Obviously, there's nothing about this that, we still have a little bit of right-of-way costs that's already been accounted for, but there's no channel realignment, there's no street realignment. We're gonna still run into the issue of the narrowness on First. This doesn't really probably accomplish what we want to accomplish
Right.
long-term. But again, I wanted to put it out there because I wanted you guys to be aware of that. So kind of looking, let's go past 1A and B because we just don't even need to talk about them now. Let's go to options 2, 3, and 4. And kind of as a starting point to kind of give you a perspective what we tried to do, and again, these are all estimates. So 4 being the starting point, meaning that is the most cost-effective one at that 1.7 million, if you can call it that. Then going to 2, you're going to be adding an additional probably 796,000 or so in that scenario. And then if you go to option 3, it's 796 plus an additional 304. So again, we have 700,000 that the city's already committed. There is a funding gap. The city is responsible for street and utilities, including at least a $200,000 water main. We are responsible for half of the right-of-way costs and for a 10-foot sidewalk, landscaping, et cetera, or anything else that we as a city would need to add. Anybody have any questions on that?
Well, I'm looking at this and I can see that there's quite a disparity as far as the price between option 2 and option 3. But we're looking at a structure, it's going to be there 70, 75 years. We're looking at probably the proper intersection alignment. And I'm thinking that are we doing it half-assed because it's cheap? Are we going to do it right the first time and look to the future?
And I can appreciate that. That was, I wish we had the old cost estimates for this pushing the bridge east, but I don't know. I want to say it was higher than this, and I don't know if we can take a closer look at that, but option 3, pushing it east, I thought was like twice as much as what's showing here as far as city cost. It was up there. It added like $2.5 million just to the city side on top of everything we wanted to do.
Yeah.
But anyway, the other thing we had talked about was at a future date, because we're moving a county road to line up with a city street. Rather than moving a county road to line up with the city street. At some point in the future, I think it was Mike that brought that, we could, on the south side of Main Street,
Move
at
the
some
street
point,
to
move
line
the
up with the
street to
county
line up
road.
with the county street, which would accomplish that goal. Which would be probably way more cost effective to do that. We're moving a bridge and county road, so. But anyway, the nice thing about option 2 is it takes care of multiple issues down there. It's slightly cheaper. The option 4 is, it doesn't address a lot of the issues that we know are down there. In my opinion, it's still option 2. It would be 2 or 3, but my preference would be 2.
I'm on board with you. We went through all those meetings. I know, correct me if I'm wrong, Jody, when we had this meeting, the state or the county has to make it as safe as possible. That's just, when you do stuff, it has to be done a safe way. And option 3 wasn't an option for them that time. They didn't feel that there was that much of a hazard, that they felt that they needed to buy both the buildings out. And in fact, they weren't even going to buy out the mayor's property at first, but after we started figuring about making it wider, that's when you guys gave into our request, I guess, to do it. So, and the county has to do their due diligence to make it safe. And that's why I was with option 2, and I think 2 different councils agreed with it that time also, just so you know. That's,
I mean, 3 seems light on the price for what
Yeah.
we all need to get done.
yeah,
I'm guessing from what I've heard tonight, we're looking at additional 900,000 over what,
So-
5.2 to more like 6.1 for option 3. And Tessa knows I'm not a math whiz, but I've just been kind of jotting stuff down as we've been going here. So yeah, there's a substantial cost difference, and it would appear that we would end up absorbing the majority of it.
Right.
So-
The big difference in cost other than the road is moving the dirt, and obviously we don't have dirt quantities calculated, so their guess is, it would take more calculations, I guess, to come up with a better dirt number, but
Right.
yeah.
Mr. Mayor and Council, what about the city's comprehensive plan? And I reviewed that online, and the latest one that was adopted, saying the Melrose City Comprehensive Plan 2030, regarding the street, is that it is the vision of the council to straighten that intersection. Does that come into play with your comprehensive plan as to how you want the city to be and where we're at right now when you're discussing this?
I don't see so.
I think we have had a discussion about it. We have an idea that, I think our direction was that we would address that at a later date because it introduces another complexity, another large expense into something that doesn't necessarily have to happen today, but it can happen after the bridge is done.
Yeah.
So there was some informal commitment to say that, yes, it should get addressed at some point in time, but we didn't feel at that time that this was the proper time to do it, I think is the way we...
Yeah, and also in the future, it also says, I think 20 years out, that potentially we would need a bridge on the east side of town too, if I remember back in the day, 20 or 30 years down the road.
West.
No, east of town, because of our expansion
Oh.
going eastwards, if I remember right.
Wow.
I don't,
North and east.
yeah, but east, like, between the east side of town and Thunder Road, there would be another potentially future bridge out that way.
Like connecting County Road 168. and
Yeah.
165.
There was something I remember that was said on that. So, Senator, did you have a question, sir?
I have to take off, Mr. Mayor
I
and
know.
Council. I'd be happy to work with you on whatever decision you come up with. I realize guys. There's a lot to wrestle with.
You ain't a kid.
Just to kind of jump back to Mike's comments earlier, with the DNR, I think it seemed where we got into a real logjam was they did want more final engineering specs, which up front would be the cost to the city, and of course, it would play into the final cost of the dam project, as they call it.
Yeah.
But the city would have to front it without the certainty of the DNR giving them a conditional approval on that. And so that is kind of the canard we're in right now. And so keep us posted on that aspect. If anything we can do to be helpful, I'm happy to continue working with you. I know the bridge is a big concern. At some point that will happen, and however that best happens, just keep me in my office updated. Happy to work with the city.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you for coming out to Melrose and helping us out with everything, okay, sir?
Sure, welcome.
All right, take good care. Good to see you again, sir. All right.
So you're on to choose options, request, if you need to request additional information, you can do a final recommendation, that come back to council. We will have to present to the LCCMR board on December 12th at their meeting. Regardless of which way we go, we need to be able to, we have to make a formal presentation to them either way.
Was straightening the city streets ever estimated? Like when you talk about leaving it as option 2 and then straightening the city street to match that intersection? Is that?
So they're talking about taking out that other part. I think yes, there is.
We have to acquire some property either way.
Oh, there's, in that case,
Right.
we'd have a significant, there's other right-of-way costs, yes.
But I mean, if that cost is a cost to the city versus spending it on number 3, like Bunker initially mentioned, is that anywhere close to even, or is it actually still less expensive to move city streets?
That's a question that I don't know.
If you look at the cost of the Mayor building and the Ilias building, we're looking at, those two we were $190,000 on Ilias, I think, and probably that much or more on Mayor, and then that much or more on Ilias. And I think we convert that to the other side of the street, we're probably, I would say we're gonna be time and a half that 380,000, close to $500,000. That's in their current state. If they're further developed or improved, I mean, those costs always go up. Then you are taking that real estate off the tax roll.
Yeah. And then you have that building right next to it that's about ready to fall into the river anyways. If something gets disturbed when they're digging up that, who's going to be at cost on that?
The old dry cleaners.
Yeah.
Colleagues.
May I ask for clarity's sake, if the city road was modified, that would not be then eligible for county matching half the cost because then it would be a city project, so it would be entirely city cost.
Yeah, that is something, that is true.
I was only bringing it up because it was probably before my time on the council, but if you're trying to save cost on the bridge and then gonna do city work later, is it equal or less or more than just doing it? Like Bunker said, maybe do it the right way now, even if it's more expensive. Whether that's the right way, I'm just using that terminology. But
In my opinion, if we even come close to entertaining option 3, we need not hard numbers, but we need commitments from, quasi halfway engineered. Because in my opinion, that one is such a big change that I don't know that those costs are all in there. City
You think
costs
they're
are all
light?
in there. What's that?
You think they're pretty light?
I think they're light, honestly. I don't know.
All right.
Because there hasn't been much engineering done in that scenario.
Okay,
Correct?
Jody?
No, there has not.
Okay.
Jody?
Just a suggestion, and I know it's.
You be the devil's advocate. That's what we want to hear.
Maybe it would be best for Mike and I to work together over the next month and figure out, I think our county road number is a little bit light, but I figure that doesn't bother you, because it's us that's gotta come up with the money.
Right.
And so, maybe Mike and I work together, and yes, it's not going to be an engineered estimate, because first of all, you couldn't get that done in a month. Secondly, we're just gonna be looking at recent construction costs of similar items, kind of rough calculating some quantities, no survey being done, no soil borings being done. Maybe if the two of us can work together to better refine options 2 and 3. I mean, it's still, again, going to be a high-level estimate, but maybe you'll have a
But it's good ballpark numbers is what you're telling us.
ballpark.
It's going to be within a $500,000 or so.
Well, and then we can also find out, especially when it comes to the bike pass, you know, if that's something that we want to pursue, we can see what our chances are and what the funding sources are. If there's other funding sources that exist out there, for example, I don't know if we could go after any of the local road improvement funds, or if we could go after any of the transportation stuff, any other funding sources that may be out there that we could
Right.
tap into. I don't know.
And the other thing I got to go back to is, you know, I thought that, I hadn't thought what, realigning that intersection, in whose mind is that so important? To me, I pull up to that on 5th Street, I like that it's offset, because you don't have a car facing you, looking at this car while you have traffic coming from both directions. You can make your decision independently. Yeah, it's offset, it's not the perfect thing, because we all like straight lines and perfect intersections. But, you know, there's differing opinions whether or not that's going to actually fix any issues there, lining that intersection. Are we spending $500,000 to $1 million lining that intersection? Is it going to fix the problems? Because now you have two cars facing each other, waiting for traffic coming in both directions. Now you got to look at this car right across from you also, whether or not they're going. So, in my opinion, I don't know that that's going to fix anything. To align
It was
these
not a
intersections.
dangerous intersection. We went through it that time, Craig. I remember you had some data on there. It's not a dangerous intersection. The county went through, it's not a dangerous intersection. We have more problems down by First Stop, you know, by the fire station there where cars are getting rolled over.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a dangerous intersection.
Hey, when I pull out of the fire truck, I'm not going that fast. I've yet to roll a car over.
Just a wall.
Miss Jody, you said that the funding through the state, you kind of requested for them to go on kind of the back burner for this project. How much longer do we have to dance before the music stops?
So the state of Minnesota has recently changed how they evaluate whether a bridge is deficient enough to be eligible for funding. Because it's risk-based and it follows the federal guidelines more so than how MnDOT has done it for years. However, so if we went solely by that, this would be removed from funding eligibility. It's close, but it's not quite there. However, because it was on the bridge waiting list before they started taking this switch, it is grandfathered in. And so, off the record, I asked someone how long we had, and I would say we've got, 3 to 4 years. And if this bridge is not replaced in 3 to 4 years, it's going to be a few more.
So we want to have some sort of decision so we can take it to the next funding cycle with the legislature get locked in, correct?
Even this year.
It would be nice to have that done.
Even this year.
And, right now, I think if we made a decision, by the end of calendar year 2019, I think we would be ready to go in 2021. So that gives you guys 2 budget cycles, and we continually have a placeholder in our road program for this project.
Okay. I appreciate that. Just
But it would be 2021, 2022 with the latest would be my goal.
okay. Thank you.
Think about this a little bit more.
Yeah, I think we table it, and
I was just going to throw a motion out there to go with option 2 because it is, along with what we have been talking about, it is the most, at this point, cost efficient.
I'll second that motion.
Okay.
Have a first and a second. Is there any other last discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carried.
So then, the direction at this point, because you agreed to go this route, you still want us to come back in November with some better numbers for you and lay
For
out the
option two.
timeline?
Yeah, that would be great.
All right, we can do that.
And I wouldn't mind sitting in on any type of discussions with it, just to, because I have sat in on so many of the meetings already.
Yeah.
I would like to be involved, so.
All right, very good.
So, thank you, Jody, for all you do. Appreciate it. Just remember, when they do eventually tear down that bridge, there is a time capsule in there from the 1800s supposedly, so please make sure that we figure that out, okay?
A little bit of pressure.
Yeah,
I know.
don't ruin it.
All right, thanks for most of you for being here. So we are gonna go back to 7, which is public hearing. It is 7:16 PM. Public hearing, chapter 76 motorized golf carts.
This is not mine.
No, don't worry.
Yeah, the amendment to this chapter 76, and we've talked about it off and on, I think, all summer. Again, for reasons known to the legislature, when we go to amend this chapter, we have to have a public hearing. That's why we have a public hearing. Talking with the chief, the ordinance that's before you now, basically it takes us back to where we started. There was a thought that maybe we just didn't have to regulate these, and they could operate on the streets without a permit. So we adopted our ordinance to essentially unregulate the ATVs. Now the guidance we're getting is that, no, you were right the first time. You do have to have permits. You do have to regulate the use of ATVs on the street. So basically, we just went back to where we were before with the ordinance that's before you. The only difference is that from when we first adopted these ordinances, the definition of an ATV has changed. So we've got the most current definition of an ATV in there. Otherwise, we're right back to where we were. If you're going to use an ATV on the city streets, you have to get a permit. They get treated the same as the golf carts.
Okay.
Thank you.
I don't know if anybody else wants to comment.
Yeah, just checking if anybody has comments for it. Okay, yeah, it's,
Propose the public
yeah,
hearing be closed.
7:18, we are closing it. Need to make a motion to close it?
You don't have to.
Okay. All right, now. All right, we will deal with this now in the action items. Ordinance number 1017, 2019, an ordinance that amend chapter 76 motorized golf carts and all-terrain vehicles. Is there any questions or concerns? Can I get a motion to approve? Oh, go ahead.
One thing, you were saying that we could do permitting for the four-wheelers. I know it's, a lot of other places don't even have anything in existence, but we can go without a fee on there, right? Because my biggest thing is these guys are paying for license on their four-wheelers already. And I know that doesn't follow through on the city part, but I don't think they should be. I mean, the golf carts are one thing, yeah, okay, you gotta pay the $20, but four-wheelers are already paying every year to have license on there, so if it's a permit, I guess that they gotta have. And the other thing is do they have to have a slow-moving vehicle sign?
That is currently how the ordinance is written.
Okay, but if they have just a permit sticker on their four-wheeler, is that good enough and not having a slow-moving?
I would say that if.
Just because like if they get out in the country, is that something that they have to have, or do they have to take it off then?
It's not required for operating outside city limits, but I would say we'd have to modify the ordinance and bring it back again if we want to remove slow-moving vehicle sign from the ATV port, for ATVs specifically.
Okay.
And I'd have to check. Most of what we're requiring is by statute.
And the mirror is required by statute, that I have to check for the slow of vehicles signed by state statute.
Okay.
But I'm comfortable with not,
Well, I mean, they have to have a-
The fee side of things, I think we meet the minimum requirements by having a permit. That's what the idea is, it requires the state law to request.
Chief, are you comfortable with us passing the amended ordinance tonight? And then if need be in the future, readdress signage on ATVs?
Depends on how much time you want to put in the Scott research, or spending your
If we make an exception to state statute, would that bite us? I mean, you said most of what is here is pulled from state statute, you said? So I guess the only curiosity would be if slow-moving vehicle on public roads is, the sign is required of ATVs also, if they're
Well,
running
I
on
just-
roads. I don't know.
And they do this, I mean, they can do the speed limit, so really they're not a slow moving, they're not like a golf cart. with
Well, a lot of tractors can too in town.
Right.
But, you know, I don't know.
So far as the permit, I think this is an item that's on your fee schedule that you could adopt at your first meeting in January.
Okay.
So.
That's fine, then we can-
Yeah, whatever you want.
Well, I'll make a motion that we do the permit, but no fee.
We have to,
And you're gonna adopt the
we have to
ordinance as
adopt the
is,
ordinance
or?
first, right? Or what?
As long as the ordinance doesn't have a $20 fee in the four-wheeler.
Making sure okay with the slow moving and everything.
Well,
For now.
for now.
Okay.
Okay,
If it becomes an enforcement issue, I'm sure you will advise us.
all right. So there was a motion made.
I'll second.
Okay, there's a second with the amendments in it. Can I get a motion to approve?
So move.
Can I get a
Sorry.
second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
That was double motion.
Yeah.
All right.
Getting late.
We're on to new business. There's different appointments that are open coming this year. They'll be published in the Beacon on the October 16th and 30th. Applications no later than November 8th. One position for Melrose Public Utilities Commission, Planning and Zoning Commission, Melrose Area Development Authority, the Melrose Housing and Redevelopment Authority. So if there's anybody that wants to serve, come up to City Hall or give a phone call and we will help you. So, and then B is Sprint lease agreement.
So we have been, this started well before I got here. I believe it was actually in 2018, so it's been going on for over a year, where we have put together an agreement with Sprint to lease some on top of the water tower. They have sites up there for their antennas and different types of equipment. And they never signed the lease agreement. They owe us $7,500 that they've owed us since December of 2018 for escrow, or we never got an escrow, they were supposed to pay us anyway. And they said that they aren't gonna cut that check because they didn't sign the agreement. So I'm inclined at this point to null and void the agreement that is existing right now, because they never signed it, and to propose a new agreement to them that would be effective as of January 1st. And this is not just with Sprint, but I'd like to go this route with all of our agreements for anything that we have, antennas on top of towers, et cetera. And it's more of a real estate agreement versus a per antenna agreement. It's a pretty successful way to manage these telephone companies or wireless companies in terms of when they are replacing their equipment. Many cities are actually going to these real estate agreements instead. And I would also propose that there be an application. And part of that application is anywhere from $7,000 to $10,000 fee that they are charged up front that can be put in an escrow account for anything that we have to incur because of this. So for example, Verizon right now is going to be doing some work on the North Tower, I believe. And we have $9,200 that they have paid us, that we then take that money, because our engineer has to do inspections, et cetera, structural engineer, and so that money is used for that. This would be the same thing. If we have to have our attorney look at all these different things, anything that happens, that's what I would propose. And I would, especially in Sprint's case, I would, if they choose not to play ball, then I wouldn't allow them to be able to expand in our community.
And I'm guessing you wouldn't have to ask the Verizon people twice to clip the Sprint wire while they're out.
Oh, no, not at all.
So is there anything we can do?
Well, they pay a lease agreement, they pay rent every month.
They pay monthly.
Yeah.
But they're saying they don't owe that money because they didn't sign the agreement.
Right.
This was a new agreement with accelerated rates or something?
No, the rates were actually the rates weren't that different
Okay,
than what
so it was
they've
just
always
a-
paid.
it was just
It's a
initial contract fee?
$7,500
Oh.
that we pay, because they
Okay.
want to put equipment on top
Yeah.
of and we have to have somebody look at that, a structural engineer's time to be able to look at that and everything else, because it's going on
Yeah.
our water tower. And so it pays for that, it pays for any type of legal or whatever we might have. It's fairly common that whenever you have an application like this, there's an escrow account. In fact, that's something that we will, when we talk about our fee schedule, I am gonna be proposing that we look at escrow accounts for some other types of things too. But this one in particular is pretty interesting.
Okay.
So if, with the council, or I would like, what I'm looking for, Mr. Mayor, and from the council, is that we null and void the existing agreement that we have, or they're actually operating under the terms of the old agreement, they never signed the new one, but that we don't acknowledge that, it just goes away, and that we're gonna send them a new agreement, and that they will be responsible, for some sort of a fee, in addition to the $7,500 that they already owe us.
I agree.
Or the current lease gets terminated. Is that-
Or what?
Or the current lease gets terminated. I mean, if you send
Yeah,
it to them, they just say, whatever, go on sale, we'll just keep paying rent.
I don't know what I'd have to look at what that lease agreement says. I don't know what the
Right.
conditions are. I think it's like a 30 or 60-day notice, but we
Right.
certainly can send them a letter that says we're going to terminate this lease.
Yeah, I mean, how do you get them to,
Yep,
if there's no teeth in there?
right.
We're not
And
gonna
that's
find anything
that's
or
part of the
whatever.
problem that we have right now,
Right.
is in our lease agreements that we currently have, there's nothing in there.
Right.
I'm assuming they have to access the inside of the tower to get up to the top.
I would assume so, yes.
That's probably
Can
the
we do a
easiest
no
way to access
trespassing
it.
and then they just can't?
Well, just $5,000 tower climbing fee every time you climb up in the inside.
Yeah, it's
of our
expiring
tower
the end of
for a
December.
open a door.
So it's Sprint, it's expiring, so there would need to be
Oh.
an agreement in place.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm
All right.
assuming that their transmitter antenna, whatever takes power, unplug it.
Well, the issue was they wanted us to do something right now because they want to get equipment on top of that tower. Well, we're not, they owe us money. I'm not
Yeah.
going to let them do anything.
That's so
They
much-
won't sign an agreement, but yet they want,
So much more
want
fun
to
to
go
climb
on
up there.
top of
I'll
the
let
tower.
you deal with Scott and see what you can do.
Yeah, we'll
That's good with
figure
me.
it out.
I'm good with that.
All right?
Number 11 is informational items, and 12 is a motion to adjourn, please.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
Thank you.
motion carried. Thank you, everyone.